like a Tinkerbell.
All right, we're going to move this to you. I'm going to wait till Jessi's on. Then I have everything and I can see and it'll be fine.
No one should call me that.
I'm on silent. Well, I know things are working because I keep getting messages. People are signing up for lectures, so that's not a bad thing.
Good.
Boy, 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 boy.
I was like, why am I so itchy? It's because I carry a lot of.
Oh no, do you need any?
No, I'm fine. It's just, as long as I know what it is. It's like,
do you want to wipe it off so you don't get a rash?
Maybe I should.
Okay, so the Satan uses a pea pad, so I apologize. And there's washcloths and soap and help yourself. Thank you. Let me know if you need anything.
You're earning out my apple.
Well, the least I can do is offer you some comfort. If you need hydrocortisone, I have some. Or hydrocortisone, I guess it is.
On the training wheels today, and then I took it off.
You can just leave that on the sink, that's fine. She's just a nut. She's just a nut. Do you need water or anything?
No, I think
I'm so good.
I think I'm good. I do just
Okay.
therapy log at the office. Showed me her new trick today.
What's that?
Well, I freaked out when her human says, "Come here." I'm like, sure. She goes, speak, and it's like, you don't get your dog to speak. But when bees speak, it's a little, like a friendly little grumble, and it's like, oh, okay, that's what they're kind of speak. We have elk hounds growing.
Oh.
Do you have access to PowerPoint? We're probably just never mind. I should have scrolled through.
What do you want?
Hang on. I'm gonna look through this.
From her power?
No, from our PowerPoint.
Oh, well, yeah, I can pull it up. Do you want me to pull it up? Let me do it over here in case she shows up.
People heard that. I don't know if that's so. Exciting.
Okay, and what am I picking?
Inspiring thoughts and images. And Mark made sure that he converted it to a format that would be viewable on a phone as well as a screen.
Mental illness is not a choice, but hope is. I opened 2 gifts this morning. They were my eyes. If you make it part of the dance, I liked that one.
We don't want stats.
Okay. Pain is real, but so is hope. Want to find out your true friends are? Get sober. Believe in yourself. No stats.
Nothing to be ashamed of. Yeah. No. Nothing political. Although it does come from 2 different locations.
That one. I like the face too.
Yeah. I love that. I say that in so many applications.
No one is you, and that is your power. You have the power to change your life at any moment. Recovery is a process. It takes time. It takes patience.
Did you see Julie's video today on Facebook? You'll have to go back and watch it. It's cute.
I like that one. Let's walk after.
She's just given us 7 things or 9 things. We confuse them.
Do not look down on anyone unless you're helping them out.
That's what I put on Facebook. That's what went up yesterday.
Mental health is just as important as physical health.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Cool. You want me to go back through it again?
Nope, I think I got 2.
Great.
I like the mental health is just as important as physical health. And if you stumble, make it a part of the dance. Sweet. Yeah.
All right, we're this, and then we're going to view on YouTube. She's not here yet, so you're just going to. And if you don't want the pineapple, I'll move it. I'm going to go turn the bathroom light off.
Okay.
And close the door.
That's good.
Like that.
Yep.
The clock is wrong because it died.
Oh, it just looks like artwork. Really? Oh, awesome. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not even. Oh, it's there.
Yep.
See, it's backwards.
Okay.
It's the whole thing.
I'd rather go this way so people don't see what's on my.
Okay.
We'll get rid of the blanket. And we'll move this.
This is funny. I did watch a Facebook. No, it was a YouTube video last night about setting your stage and how just a couple pieces of moved clutter makes all the difference.
Yes. And I'm very nervous because I don't like sharing myself with people. Okay, when it says 3, 2, 1,
This comes up.
this comes up. And you'll be able to kind of see it.
Okay.
Oh, nope, it didn't do it. 5-second delay. So you're
Okay.
good. So now you're on. What we're going to do is.
I just stuck out my tongue and it's like, I didn't do that. Oh, yeah, I did. 5 seconds.
We're going to switch back to there. That is what you're actually seeing. I'm going to switch over here to YouTube.
Okay. So what can you see over there?
Right now it's me.
Oh, lovely.
Yep, 3 people are watching.
Oh, Marissa says hi, Jerry.
It's me.
Oh,
They're watching. All right, muted us, but they can still hear us online. So I'm going to be quiet now. You can say hi to everybody.
they'll see me.
Oh, yeah, you're live.
Oh, I'm live. But I can't hear them.
No.
Okay.
You'll be able to hear Jessi when she comes on.
Right.
And you need to look for her in the corner and see what she
Oh, down here?
Yeah. And I'll help you with that.
Awesome.
And then you'll be able to see the comments.
Scrolling there.
Or I'll get the comments on the
Yes.
ask them to you.
It's like passing notes in class.
Exactly.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. This must mean that you finished watching Jessi's keynote speech a little early. And we will be starting with Q&A promptly at 8 o'clock. We don't want to jump the gun on that. We want to give people the full hour to watch her presentation before we launch into questions. So I see one familiar face. Hi, Marissa. Hopefully there are a lot more people out there. And hopefully you're thinking of questions you might have thought about as you were listening to Jessi's message. I listened to it earlier today so I could be prepared. And there's a lot of information in there and a whole lot to work with. So hopefully she generated some good questions that you might be willing to ask. we're just going to hang out for a little while. They can't say anything, so they can't hear me back, right? Okay. Gosh, I should have thought of a good joke to tell. Shan't be too. It's really been quite an unusual process for the Mental Health Expo Committee, and I've said it before, and I'll say it publicly now. I'm thankful for Amanda's excellent tutelage. Without the support of the university and the lectures department, we could not have pulled this off. We have 10 agencies that are coordinating together to make this happen, and we all got stopped in our tracks due to our friend COVID. We had to decide whether we were going to pull the plug and skip this year for the expo, or whether we would try to figure out a way to happen. And I can certainly say it's been a little more work to make it happen electronically and virtually, but it's been every bit of what it took. We're very delighted. For those of you who took the tour around the expo floor, if you've ever been to Expo Pass at the Memorial Union, you know that we have a lot more exhibitors this year. We have had about 25 in the past, and this year we had 4. So who knows? I guess when you can be sitting at home, jamming, it's a great place to go. Okay. Hi.
Hey.
There is our friend Jessi Beyer.
Hi, everyone.
We're not sure how many everyones there are out there. We're just kind of hanging the clock to roll around.
Cool.
We've been I'm asking them to come up with some questions.
Good.
Snows, you gave us a lot to think about in that presentation you made for us. So, and it was really nice to have some visuals and some references. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. It was really fun to put together and trying to like condense my book into one little presentation of information. So it was really fun to put together for you guys. Absolutely.
Jessi, the other day when I spoke with you for the first time, I let you know that I mistakenly thought you lived in Minnesota, but I know you're out in Oregon. So how are you out there today?
Yeah, I think things are calming down a little bit. So for those of you guys who don't know, Oregon's on fire. I mean, the whole Pacific Northwest is on fire. All the way down through California is on fire. I've been out with my search and rescue team helping with evacuations and setting up communication stations for the various fire hydrants and things like that. So I've definitely had kind of a front row seat to the craziness and things that are going on. And it's being contained, at least the fires that are in the Portland area, they're getting more controlled. The wind is shifting in the other direction and pushing it away from Portland. So it's definitely an improvement. But I mean, you still walk outside and it looks like there's such dense fog because of the smoke, and crews are still out there working very, very hard. So it's still definitely a tumultuous time out here. But hopefully things are turning for the better.
That's really good to hear. We're a long way away from you, but residual coloring Iowa air that we're pretty sure is coming from our friends out west. I do hope that it's under control. And when I had the search and rescue dog, it's like hopefully that's going well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's been really fun. In terms of these fires, the dogs that are out there are going to be working once everything is cooled down. So the ground is below 100 degrees for them to go out and start working and things like that. So that's a few days, maybe a week out. Actually just got a text from my SAR team that said there were reports of dogs out there now. So maybe some of the FEMA dogs have come in to start working because FEMA is now in control of the situation here. So they're part of it. But then, yeah, my dog and I are still training. We have training on Thursday night if the air quality is okay, and working towards our air sensors. It's really fun as well.
Oh, very good. You have plenty of things in your never a dull moment, no doubt.
Very true.
Good. So yeah, is there anything else you want to share with us as a warm-up? We have about 5 minutes before the rest of the crowd catches up with us to go live with our Q&A at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm really excited to hear some of the questions that y'all have come up with. I know I got a little sneak peek of some of the ones that were on the list. I'm really excited to kind of talk about trauma and what it is and kind of elaborate on everything in the presentation. But I guess the one thing that I'd leave everyone with from my presentation, if y'all can take one thing away from it, is that there's so many different ways to heal. There's so many different ways to support someone who's healing as well. And so there isn't this, step-by-step written in stone guidebook to supporting someone or healing from trauma or mental illness in general. But if you approach the other person or yourself with love and compassion and understanding, then the rest of it's kind of going to fall into place. So I know some other people, after they've watched my presentation, they're like, oh my God, it's so much. I don't even know what to focus on from this. And it's just about, being open, being honest, being empathetic, and finding your path from there. So again, if that's one thing that everyone can take away from the presentation, then I think I will have done my job.
I think so. And I think that it's good to know that there are options.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've heard in my adult is if you feel like you need a therapist and you find one that isn't working well with you, then don't be afraid to try a different one. Well, this is a whole level. If you find a modality that isn't helping you to, then something else, because goodness, there's some things out there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And like a good analogy of that too is when you're starting a dose of medication for an illness that you have or something like that, or pain medicine or something like that, where it's pharmaceutical, right? It's generally accepted as traditional medicine. You have to work a little bit to find what dose is going to work best for you. It might be a different drug you have to switch to. It's not like the first shot and everything is right away from there. And it's the same with therapy as well. Like you said, different modalities, different therapists, different locations, lots of different things play a role in that. So don't just, hit it once and be like, oh, it didn't work, I'm done, I'm never trying again, because there might be that best fit out there for you. It just might be 3 steps down the road.
There's evolution. What didn't work 5 years ago might work today, or new treatments. One of the things that as the Expo committee works to pull this event together and find a keynote speaker, there are a couple of different audiences. There's the person who knows they have a condition and could use support and resources. And then there's the person who knows some or thinks they might know somebody that could use some help. And if that person hasn't reached out for themselves, then wanting to, try to navigate the waters to be able to help them out. So I felt like you gave some options and good guidance to both population. So the person who needs to reach or the person who wants to reach out on that. So it's a two-sided, well, probably 3 sides if we could make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. All of the sides, right? No, that's really good to hear, and I appreciate that. And it is difficult because so many people are in so many different places in their mental health journey, whether that's their own or someone else's. And so trying to get a message out there that resonates with everyone and gives everyone some stuff that they can do is really what I try to do, because like I said, I know that everyone who listens to my presentation or attends my presentation is going to be in the exact same spot with the exact same belief set. So
I would never tell you that you can't possibly rise for your young age.
Well, thank you.
When we try to speak, knowing that we have a blended audience, we about half of our audience is university students, along with some faculty and staff, and then the other half is our community. And so there's some general light there, and I think you're the youngest keynote speaker we've had, but I truly appreciate your energy and your ability to share what you've learned along the way with the rest of us. So thank you so much for being a part of our little event.
Absolutely. Well, I was so excited. I mean, I know I told you this when we spoke recently, but I was coordinating with Amanda for like a year and a half, and then we finally came together, and I was so excited to be here. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, and I think that we had, others may not know this, but we had Jessi booked in as our keynote speaker when we were planning to go live, and then COVID hit, and it's like, wow, who knew we would be dealing with a whole new world of trauma, whether it's trauma or not. So we knew that you were the right one for the job. We're really glad that you flipped gears or switched gears and we're able to go virtual. So
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's one of those things.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, it's one of those things. Every single one of my gigs this semester is virtual, and it's all about, how do we still reach those students? How do we still keep them engaged, or community members, or whoever I'm speaking to? So I know Amanda felt really bad. She's like, we keep switching the plan, and I'm like, it's fine. I'm gonna work with it. It's all good. So yeah.
At least the kinetics, not quicksand.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we've all learned to be pretty flexible, and you can't plan far in advance. You cancel. So it's been good. It's been good for all of us, I think. So yeah, you had the right for us at the right time. So.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to get to these questions and give everyone the clarity and elaboration that they need from the presentation. Can't wait.
Very good. Okay, getting close. It's almost 8 o'clock. Okay. We're passing back and forth here. It's almost like, I don't know. I hope the teacher doesn't catch us or something.
Under the table there.
Amanda says she is the teacher. Things like this with a couple different media platforms happening at the same time. I see where's I hiding, because
yep. Yeah, that's so funny.
So yeah. Apparently there's a little bit of feedback noise.
Yeah, it's a little bit of feedback. Breaking up slightly. I can still understand you, but it's a little bit breaking up.
Do you have headphones by any chance?
I do, but usually when I plug them into my computer, they don't work super well. I'll go grab them and we can try. Give me just a second.
We can try. We have a few people who have joined on and have made some comments, so that's a thing. It's kind of
awesome.
It's going to join in and not.
All right, how does that sound in terms of sound quality? Is that better?
Let's see. Some more. Let's give it a whirl.
Give this a whirl? Okay, cool. Perfect. I'm going to go grab one more thing. I'll be right back and then we'll get started.
Okay. So if you're just joining us, thank you so much for tuning in to the Q&A session, keynote presentation for the Story County Mental Health Expo. We're just getting our speaker, Jessi Beyer. We're working on a little bit of audio quality so that we have the very best opportunity to get your questions answered. Jess will be back with a moment. So there she is. So are we? All right. Well, let's see. So we've already unofficially talked about Jessi, but we do thank Jessi for being here as our keynote speaker for the Expo and for sticking afterwards. We'll do some. Hopefully we won't stump her. We'll just have good. So in case you forgot, Jessi Beyer is a speaker, a mental health advocate, and the author of How to Heal, a practical guide to 9 natural therapies you can use to release your on a help her feel heard, appreciated, mental health struggles, and design life I love waking up to. She's in dozens of media outlets and has spoken to thousands of people across the country. So we welcome Jessi Beyer to our Q&A portion of the night.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you and answer all of the questions.
All right. Well, we do have a 2-hour time difference that hopefully we'll all get to a decent hour tonight.
Absolutely.
We have some questions that have been, and the first question I think is really a good one to start with because it kind of sets the baseline for all comments. And you talk about what do you consider to be the definition trauma, just to make sure that we're all thinking of it in the same framework?
Absolutely. This is such an interesting question because it really depends on what, I guess, type of person you're talking to. So according to the DSM, which is the Handbook for Mental Health Professionals, a trauma is something very specific, like sexual assault, domestic violence, something like that. It's an event that has a set series of psychological and physiological symptoms that come afterwards. For most people in kind of the natural and integrated space, trauma is something that is very emotionally disturbing and it stays with you over a period of time. That's more the definition that I lean to because it gives a little more flexibility in terms of the individuality of the response. For example, some people can go through the exact same thing as someone else, and they're going to have a very different response. For one person, that would have been a trauma, and for the other person, it wouldn't have, even though they went through the same thing. So, like I said, I kind of like to think of trauma as something that is very emotionally distressing, very overwhelming, and then it has that piece that sticks with you and continues to affect your life for weeks, months, years to come.
Good. Lots of clarification there. Thank you.
Of course.
Although everyone has experienced some level of trauma in their lifetime, especially on our events, some might feel like they don't need to participate in some treatment we've mentioned because the perceived level of trauma and so do you have any suggestions who don't feel like they need any kind of form of treatment?
Don't go. I mean, it's very simple. You know, if you don't feel like you've been traumatized and you don't really feel like you're struggling, then there's no need to shove yourself in this predetermined trauma box and say that, yes, I need help. The only thing I guess I would encourage you to do is really take a look at yourself and your situation and your emotions and say, do I not feel like I need help because I'm living under a stigma of therapy and of mental illness, or am I really just okay and I really don't need that support? But yeah, I mean, the bottom line is not everyone needs to go to therapy for trauma. Some people totally handled it and they've got it under control, and if that's you, then don't go. You're fine.
Absolutely. Jessi says.
Oh my God, I'm not God in my opinion from my experience, but yeah, I mean, everyone knows their individual reaction is the best, and just to go off of what you're telling yourself.
And your experience is one of the reasons we invited you to do this. So we know that you have personally dealt with trauma. Can you share what quality worked for you personally?
Yeah, so one of the things that I regret most about my trauma healing journey is that I didn't have any professional support. I went to one day of talk therapy and was so uncomfortable with it that I literally ran out of the building and went back. And for years after that, I was struggling to heal on my own. I mean, there were setbacks. I was doing some writing exercises and like personal development stuff, which is great, but it's not what I needed. I needed that really strong support. Once I got to a place where I was okay getting that support and I learned about some of these other therapies that I talked about in my presentation, I'd say the one that resonated with me the most was equine assisted therapy. I'm a horse person at heart, and so being out in nature with the horses on the farm was just an environment that really spoke to me on a soul deep level. And I also liked the use of metaphors in there. It's very easy to open up a conversation with that, and instead of sitting there and looking someone in the eyes and telling them your story, you can talk to the horses and move the horses, and it was just more approachable for me. So that's kind of my personal favorite, but everyone's gonna have their own. But yeah, that's kind of my personal one that worked the best for me.
So you have some experience and some personal preferences. What led you to research so many other treatment options? How did you come up with this list of options to make the book? What was that?
Yeah, it's definitely not as exciting as some people think it is. I was taking a nature-based therapies course, and I was like, this is really interesting. This makes sense to me, that using nature and the spirituality and healing that comes with it to release trauma. I was like, okay, this makes sense. I wonder what else is out there. And I literally just did a Google search for natural trauma therapies and then kind of started picking up a few here and there. I think equine assisted therapy was one of the first ones I found. And when I started interviewing some professionals in those fields, I always asked them at the end, I was like, okay, what am I missing? What other therapies do I need to look at? What other professionals do I need to talk to? And so they gave me pointers of like, oh, have you checked out this one? And you need to go talk to this person, and kind of bounced me around until I put the list that I had. So not like this huge revolutionary unveiling of all these therapies, but that's kind of how it pieced together for me.
Well, it's nice that you packaged it also nicely in a book for us.
There you go. I took like all of that research and just put it right there for you.
There you go. So if someone were particularly interested in how trauma affects the body physically, what would you suggest to point them to maybe do some research about that or to check that out, the physical aspect of trauma?
Yeah. One of the best books out there about the physical part of trauma and just trauma in general is a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. He is like the god of trauma. He did so much research and really looked at how it's more than just psychological and there is that physical component. And his book would be the first place I would recommend. Again, it's called The Body Keeps the Score. It's available everywhere, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the places. So I definitely suggest checking that out. And then I would also really talk to some trauma survivors if you know them, because that's where you're going to get that conversation and understand what it feels like to carry trauma, because it feels like a weight. It feels like something you are literally carrying around with you. It's not just this expression that people use. So having conversations with them, doing a bit of research on your own, reading that book, I think would be a good place to start for people.
Thanks. So let's talk a little more about recommending what's on Jessi's reading. Other than your own book, of course, we are happy to allow you to promote and to promote for you. Have you other authors or books related to trauma, the modality to address it or aspect of it? You gave us the one about the body keeps us physical. Do you have other suggested reading that you found helpful?
Yeah, so there's lots of really good books out there. There's some that kind of address trauma in general. There's one called Trauma Treatment Toolbox, and it has a bunch of different tips for healing from trauma. That's, I think, a really good book. And then there's also lots of different books in each of the modalities. So there's books about dance movement therapy. There's books about equine assisted therapy. And then one book that I'm actually really excited to come out is a friend of mine. She's a trauma-sensitive yoga therapist, and she wrote this book that's like a combination of poetry and memoir and photographs from her trauma-sensitive yoga experience that really, when I read it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is just speaking my language. So her name's Kayla Schaefer. I don't know exactly when it's coming out, but I definitely recommend that. And then as well, in terms of other book recommendations in these modalities and learning about trauma in general, I love memoirs for that, for kind of the same reason that I recommended having conversations with other trauma survivors, because you'll get then that academic piece from reading a few of the books in the different modalities or Trauma Treatment Toolbox or something like that. But then you'll also get that survivor experience. And I think when you're able to put those two pieces together, you have a really good understanding of trauma and how it affects people and how to heal from it and things like that. So one of my favorite memoirs that just came out is There I Am by Ruth Lindsay. If you don't know her, she has an incredible story of overcoming an accident and chronic pain and lots of self-esteem issues and confidence issues and things like that. And she's just a lovely, lovely woman, and her book is really powerful. So I definitely recommend that as well.
We have another question that has come in. People who are living in rural areas, might you know of any resources that can help them start their journey, since they don't always, rural areas have access at some urban areas?
That's a really good question. I know in terms of getting professional support, EMDR is one of the most common natural therapies out there. So I would look to see if there's an EMDR therapist in your area. That might be the therapy that might be closest to you if you live in a rural area, just because of the prevalence of therapists in that modality. But I would also explore some of the more, I don't want to use the word at home, but kind of at home methods that I discussed. So find a spot in nature that really resonates with you. Look up some meditation and mindfulness practices and try to work that into your day. Are there things you can journal about? Are there books that really resonate with you that you can read? Kind of approaching it from a personal development side of things and having those spaces where you feel at peace and you feel calm and you feel at home. And then if it is available, working in some of that professional support. One thing that's actually great about COVID-19 right now, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but so many therapists are offering virtual sessions right now. So if the individual who asked this question really does want some professional support, then geography is not a limitation right now. So as long as you have an internet connection, which you do because you're watching this, then I would definitely look up some therapists that are offering virtual sessions and see if that would be a fit for you.
Very good. And I have a feeling that the virtual therapy is probably going to go on for a little while. So it is good to take advantage of that. Have a bit of a silver lining around the big black cloud.
Absolutely.
So I want to switch gears a little bit, so much about resources. But how would somebody know if they're experiencing trauma rather than just adult.
Mm-hmm.
When does the teeter-totter tip?
Yeah, it's really about how long this issue stays with you and how it affects you. So that's part one of the answer. And then part two of the answer is that trauma is also a spectrum, especially if you're looking at the definition that I gave at the beginning of the question and answer session. So if this is your spectrum, you may be just inside the spectrum of what's considered trauma, and you'd still be worthy of getting help and support and healing and whatever methods are good for you. When you are like, does this really count as trauma or not? You can start to look, like I said, at how long it's stuck with you and how it's affecting you. So for example, to kind of speak about my own healing journey, I'd say I was really struggling with my trauma for about 3 years after it happened, because it was hard for me to interact with this person. It was hard for me to interact with people in general. It was hard for me to look at myself with love and compassion and think that I did good things during that relationship that was really traumatic for me. And that was something that I dealt with every day. It impacted my quality of life. Once I kind of was able to heal from that and release that, honestly, it's still something I think about. And it's still something that makes me sad from time to time, but I'm able to live my life without constantly being affected by that trauma. So kind of where you fall on that spectrum could be a deciding factor for whether you officially have trauma or not. But my main message here is I personally don't think it's very helpful to spend a lot of time thinking about whether your experience and your reaction to it qualifies as trauma or not. It's more about, are you struggling? Do you need help? Yes or no? It's not as much about whether it's officially classified as trauma or not.
That's really a great perspective. Thanks so much for sharing that. Someone asked a question of my roommate showing symptoms of depression and anxiety, but they refuse to get help. I've talked to them multiple times to try to get them to seek help, but they still refuse. What can I do as a roommate friend?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I want to commend you for recognizing this in your friend and really trying to get them the help that they need, because that is really important to have someone in their life that's looking out for them so well and is so attuned to how they're doing. So good on you, first of all. Second of all, as you're probably recognizing, you can't force them to get help. And even if you did literally drag them into a therapist's office, they're not going to get as much out of it as if they actually wanted to be there. So what I would recommend to you is a couple of different things. Number one, really just try and hold that space for them and let them know through your actions and through your words that you are there for them if and when they want to come to you. It may be a month from now, it may be a year from now. They might call you in 10 years and say, hey, Susie, Bob, whoever you are, I really needed you back then. You were there for me, and that's why I was able to move through these last 10 years. So you may not know that you're being helpful for them, but holding that space, validating their emotions, and letting them know that, hey, when they do want to take some more proactive steps towards help, you're there for them. The second thing that I would do is this is really hard because this was exactly my scenario. Is I had someone in my life that was really struggling and refused to get any help because of it. Make sure that someone's taking care of you. Make sure that you have someone that's supporting you. Make sure you're getting any sort of help that you need, because you want to be a good support system for them, yes, but you also want to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. When you are supporting someone who doesn't want to get help and they seem like hell-bent on staying stuck in their ways, that can be really, really hard on you too. So support them, hold the space, validate their emotions, all of the things that I discussed in my presentation, but also make sure that someone's there for you too.
Wow. That's how to be a good friend. Thanks. This is a little more technical question, perhaps. We think about integrative therapies, and we know that that's helpful for trauma. Are there other situations where integrative therapy is helpful? For like other types of struggles or mental illness? Is that kind of where we're going with this? Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of these therapies have been studied for trauma specifically, but also for depression, for anxiety. I think those are the two biggest ones. So equine assisted therapy, craniosacral therapy, literally all of them have been studied in multiple different areas. I'd say the big three, I guess, are depression, anxiety, and trauma, especially because a lot of them are correlated. But there are also therapists out there in these various modalities that work with bipolar disorder, that work with schizophrenia, and things like that. So yes, absolutely. And I can't say that there's one that doesn't work. for other things. EMDR, I'd say, is the one that is most heavily focused on trauma because that does a lot of work with memory reprocessing, which is most necessary for trauma. But still, I mean, that could be a helpful healing modality for depression and kind of self-confidence and self-worth issues that go along with depression or anxiety and paranoia and things like that. So yes, all of these work for lots of different therapies, or mental illnesses.
And my understanding is that illnesses don't have a defined line. They find residual stuff from another one primary diagnosis. It makes sense that modality out of different situations.
Absolutely. And it's interesting too, when you look at the psychiatric diagnoses surrounding trauma, especially with adjustment disorders, which is kind of a catch-all for trauma symptoms, but not quite PTSD. They actually have subsets with anxiety, with depression, and with mixed anxiety and depression. So a lot of things are comorbid in the mental illness space, especially anxiety, depression, trauma, bipolar disorder, things like that. So they do all work together, and there can be residual pieces where you're like, I kind of fall over here and then some over here and things like that. So definitely explore these options, kind of regardless of what you may be struggling with.
Kind of a package deal. You have to work on each part to get the whole package taken
Absolutely.
care of. So Jessi, we know that you're a writer. We also assume that you're probably a reader. Do you have any favorite quotes that you do that really resound with you, or do we had a PowerPoint cycling during Mental Health Expo online, and it had just empowering and inspiring words. So do you have a message or a couple that you found helpful to be willing to share with people?
Absolutely. My favorite quote doesn't really relate to mental health, but every time I hear this, I just get so fired up for life. And it's a quote by Charles Bukowski. It goes, "We are here to laugh at the odds and live our lives so well that death will tremble to take us." And every time I hear that, I'm just like, yes, do the things. I don't know. I get really pumped up and really excited to go out and live life. So that's kind of my motto. There's also a poet named Erin Hansen, E-R-I-N Hansen, and she is just phenomenal. Her poems are so emotional and so deep, and she goes into everything from depression to life to relationships to death, all across the spectrum there. So I definitely recommend checking some of her work out as well.
Wonderful. That's much inspiring. The end of the road. The end of the road isn't the end of the road unless so inspiring.
Yes, I love that.
Okay, so what are some good ways that people can be there for themselves? Those people who may not have experience but are supporting people who have. How do we take of us? I know that you mentioned a little bit of us, so that we're supportive of someone else.
I would really lean into the steps of holding the space that I discussed in my presentation, specifically the one about not letting your ego get involved. This is something that I did very poorly when I was supporting the individual that I mentioned previously, and I thought that his failure was my failure, and I was so wrapped up in his own struggles that it made it difficult for me to separate his struggles from my struggles. So if you are supporting someone, I'd say one of the best ways that you can take care of yourself is to recognize that their failure is not your failure. Their relapses or setbacks or flashbacks or triggers or anything are not an indication that you held the space improperly or that you love them incorrectly. And kind of along that same vein, make sure you're not trying to control their choices. And this is good for them, right? Because they need to have that autonomy and learn to trust themselves again. But it also takes that responsibility off of you. You recognize that, they're making their own choices and I can support them and love them, but I am not responsible for the outcome of their decisions. I feel like when you start to try to take that responsibility or let your ego get involved in that way, that's when you really start to get hurt in the process. So make sure there still is that boundary between you and them, and that you can do your part, but everything else is on them and it's not on you. I'd say that's probably the biggest tip that I can give, aside from what I said previously about making sure that someone's supporting you too.
Very good. One of the things I like to ask people when we do a Q&A is there any question that you might ask that you'd have an opportunity to share something that you shared earlier in the keynote? Is there something you would like us to know that didn't come out in the questions asked?
Ooh, that's a really good question. And this is going to be the one that stumps me, right? Like every actual question, I'm like, yes, I got an answer. And then this one, I'm like, oh. So no, that's a really good question. And I think this is something we touched on a little bit previously in our conversation before the official Q&A started, and that's more about what I want people to take away from this is, you know, yes, it's good to know about the different therapies. And yes, it's good to know which ones work better for the somatic part of trauma, which parts work better for the emotional part. You know, how do you support someone? What are the steps? Those things are really, really important. But the message that I would really try to give people, if they can take away one thing from this, is that if you show up in your life as a trauma survivor, in your life as a supporter, or in the person you're trying to support, if you show up with love and compassion and empathy and you get rid of judgment, shame, and criticism, you're going to be doing a good job. You're going to be taking care of them, you're going to be taking care of you, and you're going to give both of you the best shot that you have to move through this process of healing quickly and successfully and in as much of a straight line as possible. So I guess that's not exactly an answer to a direct question, but that's really the message that I'm trying to impart on people is that love and compassion and empathy, and then throwing judgment, shame, and criticism out the door.
Well, I would say that not only are you an author, you're an advocate, but you're also a mind reader, because the question I want a chance to share something that hadn't been asked before I asked you, if we were nothing else, what would you want to take away from tonight? And the question.
There you go. I'll add that to my bio.
Yeah, there you go, mind reader. So, Amanda, do you want to feed quick? Is there anything there that we've missed? Okay. I want to thank you again for spending some time with us in Iowa. And of course, this has been recorded, so we will watch it again. And you continued success, book sales, and your advocacy. Thank you for sharing yourself with us. I did want to pull one quote out of the PowerPoint that we were before, and it could guide. Have the serious one that says health is just as important as physical health, and I think it's important to talk about some of those physical signs. But the message that I would close our night with is, if you stumble, just make it a dance. So thank you, Jessi, for being here. Thank you for hosting this. Thank you to all the other members, the 10 agencies that helped this happen in the midst of turmoil. I'm really excited that we had a sort of people, and answer. Thank you to everyone who's been a part of this.
Yeah, and thank you guys so much for having me. It was really great to be here with you and share my knowledge and my passion and answer all your questions. So thanks again, everyone.
Very good. Thanks, Jessi. Good night, everyone.